Burning Issues edition number 5. This is a series of burning issues. It's a series of editions whereby the Square resident panelists get to discuss and debate and have a conversation around issues that you, our viewers, put forward to us. And the issues we're going to tackle tonight, some of them are recurrent. We've discussed them before on the Square. Key amongst them is Kinyarwanda as a medium of instructions in lower to upper primary schools. We're also going to talk about tenants and landlords, as well as rights of tenants. And we're also going to revisit a very burning issue in Rwanda today regarding road safety and drunk driving. These are issues you put forward to us. We have no guests on our Burning Issues editions that happen every last Wednesday of the month. It's just the Square resident panelists talking about issues that you put forward. My name is NMPC, host of the Square. I'm very happy to be here, and I'm happy to be joined by the resident panelists. Charles, always a pleasure to have you.
Same here, Dana. How are you?
Good.
Good.
Are you ready for Burning Issues edition 5?
As usual, yes. It's one show I always look forward to.
Exactly. Once a month. Yeah. Berna, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thank you, Dan.
Great. And tonight we're introducing what is normally known as Vox Pops, basically Vox Populi, the voice of popular voice. And this is with regards to ordinary people, Rwandans, men, women, professionals, students, who watch the Square and give us their inputs on some of these issues. So the first topic on the Burning Issues edition is to do with Kinyarwanda as a medium of instruction. And if you'll allow me to read just a bit, Charles and Berna, you know, as per the competency-based curriculum, the language of learning in pre-primary and lower primary is Kinyarwanda. This is a policy directive that has been in place for at least a decade, since 2009. Even though studies have shown that one's mother tongue is crucial to effective learning, there's been some debate around this. There's been issues of compliance in schools actually putting this forward. There's also been a bit of, I think I would say, miscommunication from, I think, maybe the ministry or government to stakeholders involved, which is schools and parents. So these are some of the issues that we are here hoping to air and hoping to clarify. But before we do that, let's go to some of the people that we interviewed regarding this particular topic. And we have a couple of short videos of people who are going to share their thoughts on Kinyarwanda as a medium of instructions in lower and upper primary schools.
For me, I see it as a good thing. Why? Because, as I said, my children don't speak Kinyarwanda. Kids need to be able and be comfortable to, in their own language, in their mother tongue. If you get that when you're little, then it's a done deal for the rest of your life. That's not something that you can lose. It's harder when you're older, yeah. I find people that when I ask them, again as an HR, which language do you speak, they never mention Kinyarwanda. They say English and French, like Kinyarwanda has no value, even though it has, because it goes, as again, with the culture.
Kiriya gitekerezo cy'uko abana bakwiga mu Kinyarwanda bahereye kuva mu mwaka wa mbere ukagera mu wa gatatu nicyo ku buryo bavangamo isomo ry'icyongereza akaba ari isomo ukwaryo noneho kwiga imibare, kwiga mu yindi system imibare n'ibiki bakabyiga mu Kinyarwanda kugira ngo ejo hazaza ururimi rwacu rukomeze rugire agaciro n'umwimerere bimere neza, u Rwanda rwacu ntirute umuco, kuko bavuga ngo agahugu gataye umuco karacika, kandi ururimi narwo ni umuco. Nkuko bavuga ngo ururimi dusangiye ruraturanga, umuco wacu ukaduhuza. Rwose ururimi ruhere hasi rugere mu wa gatatu, ariko andi masomo nayo y'icyongereza n'igifaransa ntaburemo kugira ngo bazagire nosiyo mu yindi kategori bazajya bageramo. Murakoze.
I heard this news coming few days ago, and knowing the fact that the new school year, we're gonna start in November, that means that everything is ready. Did we also consider that if we implement this system, and all the logistics are not ready, how would it affect our kids? Is this something that necessary to implement as soon as possible, or maybe we can think about it and see what are the most effective way to do it?
Yes, I think I agree that if the children start learning in the mother tongue at a low age, will even develop his or her brain to better communicate with other people. Because if you start communicating with foreign language, that you'll be confused. So if you understand Kinyarwanda at the low age, you'll know how to communicate properly, and communication make that even learning become more smoothly. And yeah, I think I agree with that.
So clearly, we can see that there are a couple of views from people we interviewed on the street, people who think that this is, of course, a very necessary intervention by the Ministry of Education in ensuring effective learning by teaching in your mother tongue from a young age. And there are people who think this is not making Rwandans competitive in the global sort of sense of the world, opening up their minds in terms of language, children easily adapting different languages from a young age. So over to you, Charles and Berna. Are you in agreement with some of the people we saw, or?
I think Berna and Dana, they're good points for and against. And I'll start with my own story. One of the most embarrassing things about myself is that I don't have the confidence to speak as good Kinyarwanda as I'm expected to be speaking. Does that mean I don't know Kinyarwanda? Not at all. I speak Kinyarwanda, and in my opinion, very good Kinyarwanda. In the opinion of my peers who speak better Kinyarwanda than Diana, they actually think I'm extremely poor. Am I happy about that? Definitely not. And these are some of the ill effects of previous PAD regimes that found our parents in exile. That's one side. The other side is there's a full party in my house. My 6-year-old Agatoni scored 98% in her midterm exams in Kinyarwanda. So there is a full party in my house. So at least I'm getting a bit of relief on that point. But the third one, you see, all know around 2009, 2010, we decided to change our curriculum, our medium of teaching to English. There was a huge exodus of teachers from Kenya, Uganda, to come and get, fast-tracked into the primary and secondary education system, including also those who are already in especially the public schools, to be fast-tracked to learn English very quickly. Now, obviously, some of them did not stay behind for different reasons. Others went back to their homes. But what ended up happening is that you had half-baked teachers passing on knowledge onto children. Now, somebody, I think one of the guys who was interviewed, the lady earlier, Doreen, if I recall well, did actually say that that you end up having half-baked people. And that is the problem of the product that we have today. They can neither speak English nor can they speak French properly, because the medium of teaching was changed halfway. That's part of the reasons, and that is a very, very big negative effect that we have. Do I agree that if you teach people, if you change the medium of teaching to Kinyarwanda, will make the product not internationally marketable? I do not agree at all. I have so many friends, not many that you and I know, who are very good international products, have come back home and are equally marketable, and their Kinyarwanda is extremely impeccable. So some of these things boil down to an individual attitude and your interest in a language. I speak for myself. My French is above average. No, not above average. At the risk of bragging.
Is it impeccable? I doubt it.
At the risk of bragging, I'll say my French is good.
Yes.
Yeah, because I'm with Dan and Bana again, I have bragging rights. My French is good, but why? It's a personal decision on languages that you make most of the time. And I want to conclude this, my opening remarks with a very mean saying. a very mean African saying that a fool at 40 will die a fool. If we are going to start teaching teachers who have already been teaching how to teach in Kinyarwanda, yet they've not been doing that, we are burying ourselves a grave, digging ourselves a grave.
Bernadette, Berna?
I think it's, first of all, sometimes I wonder why there should be a debate around language, because language is identity, really. And
just like Patrick said.
You know, yeah, you have to do everything you can to protect it, to preserve it. And, I mean, I've seen the debate around globalization, but what we've seen also is that we have global stars who cannot speak English or French, who go native. And the onus is always on whoever wants to listen to them to get translation.
I think what comes to mind is some of these athletes who, when they're being
Chinese,
interviewed
look
after...
at the Chinese for a very long time, they communicate in their language. And also if you look at, yes, heads of states, Russia, he speaks Russian, you get translation. German, most of the time, it is German. So I think the issue of globalization is not a problem. I think the bigger problem is around education policy not being predictable, because then parents don't know how to orient, their children, because if they're saying the medium of instruction is English, then at home, you try as much as you can to orient the child towards English. But if you know for the next, 10 years or 20 years it's Kinyarwanda, then you will orient your child towards Kinyarwanda. So I think the beginning point has to be, we need a predictable education policy. That's one. Two, we need incentives around the use of Kinyarwanda. And what kind of incentives? We all know that, if anybody has been applying for scholarships, their language exams, TOEFL, you still have to do, yes, even when you think you can speak English, they will take you through, an English test. Why can't we do that for Kinyarwanda? Because the moment you create demand for Kinyarwanda, people will do it. The parents will definitely get their kids to learn Kinyarwanda. But we have a situation now where there is no incentive. The incentive is minimal. I don't think it's enough to argue that, you have to be patriotic and speak the language. I think beyond that, we have to be practical. Human beings respond to incentives. So let's create incentives and say, first of all, maybe there are scholarships. If you get this pass mark in Kinyarwanda, you qualify for ABCD. That's one. Two, in terms of the laws, I know they're always in the, every time we have policy, these days, increasingly, it's in English, which is quite unfortunate. But imagine if you have to do that, even in Kinyarwanda. So I think there's not so much resistance to Kinyarwanda as a language, but the issue of predictability around policy, but also creating incentives for people to use the language.
Absolutely, I agree. Personally, for me, I think what I noticed, and Aisha alluded a bit to it, I think on my part, this is a policy that's been there since 2009. So for a decade, it's been there. It's just that recently, I think there was an audit undertaken across schools by the ministry to see if schools were actually compliant with this 10-year policy. And lo and behold, they found that a majority of schools were not, private and public schools, most of them were not teaching Kinyarwanda as a medium instruction from primary 1 to P3. So one, I think communicating this for the last 10 years, I think was an issue because there are people who, a lot of parents think this is an overnight sort of directive. I personally, it's just through doing some research and educating myself, when there's a lot of public outcry, I realized this is something that has been in place for, a decade. So I think it's really the onus is on these institutions that are responsible for the future of our children, in this case, education, to really, roll their sleeves and do a bit more work in terms of making sure the Rwandan public is aware. Because you have pushback from schools, you have pushback from parents. And I think other than enforcing that you have to study in Kinyarwanda, there has to be a sort of value, a valued why. There are studies that show children learn more effectively when they're taught in their mother tongue, in the formative years. So I think that's something that's very important that the Ministry, for instance, of Education should do. And going forward, I hope this is going to be there for another decade. It was there in 2009. I hope it's going to be there in, is it 2029?
Yes.
Yes,
Oh, yeah.
something that will, like Brenna was saying, be completely reliable, something that is going to be there for no changes, let's say in the next 5 years. Personally, like you said, Charles, it's unfortunate circumstances that forced some of us to grow up in exile. If I could turn back the hands of time, I would definitely have wanted to have my formative years studying Kinyarwanda to enable me to speak it as fluently as I dream of today.
Speak it fluently, like Bamorite.
Yes, exactly.
But I want to add something around the incentives and some of these things that, sometimes we can be very, very militant in the way we approach our policies and not understand that there are many ways of skinning the cat. So for you to wake up...
That's a new favorite saying of yours on the square.
I know.
Yes. I didn't realize.
Yes.
But if you're to look at saying that you're going to wake up in the morning and say every school from the first year to the third year of primary school will have to have Kinyarwanda as their mode of instruction, that might be extremely difficult to implement, but also may come with a bit of resistance. But if you're to instead say, in addition to that, we are going to ask all schools to have, like credits if it is a university, or core subjects or non-core subjects if it's primary, and say Kinyarwanda has to be a core subject in each and every school throughout the 6 years of primary education. That is a huge step in the right direction. If you're to again say that the hours that are dedicated towards teaching Kinyarwanda are going to be increased by another 20-30%, that's a huge stride towards the right direction, and is most likely to meet less resistance. Bana, you hit the nail on the head when you say there is no one out there who is against learning Kinyarwanda.
Learning in Kinyarwanda.
I think you said learning Kinyarwanda. Yes. But some of these things may face resistance because of the way the message has been brought out. Yet the reason for which the message has been put out there is not wrong at all.
Absolutely.
So it's about how we communicate certain things. We can arrive at the same result without necessarily causing alarm. Yes.
Is there something
And I honestly feel like everything has to be done to promote the use of Kinyarwanda. Like everything has to be done because we don't have an excuse anymore. We are back home. It's a new country. It's a new generation. So we should be able to reflect that. Yeah. And I mean, technology these days with translation.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
in fact, I hope the innovative. I hope this will, be a call for people to come up with innovative solutions or ideas to further this. Adoption of Kinyarwanda learning as a medium of instructions in schools. Whether it's putting them on tablets, whether it's getting literature out there, storybooks for children in Kinyarwanda, the usual folk tales of, Frère Jacques, instead of doing it in French, something Kinyarwanda. And I think what I've been seeing, let's say also in social media, in terms of Kinyarwanda material that's coming in, we have amazing young creators. We have people who are amazing digital artists. We have digital comic creators. I think you've been seeing publishers. So really, there's a huge opportunity for people to actually make the implementation and adoption of this much easier. So keep your tweets coming on this topic.
May I throw a spanner in the works regarding Kinyarwanda? Of course, what Diana usually does is throw out tweets out there when it's in the run-up to Banning Edition, the Square on Banning Edition. And a lot of them were coming around to say we should have the Square in Kinyarwanda.
Thank you, Charles, for raising this. Thank you for raising this.
And I think this is being a little bit unfair to RBA because, in my personal opinion, the most popular show, the show that I like most, the talk show that I like most on RBA is in Kinyarwanda, Imboni. It's
absolutely
extremely entertaining.
Fantastic show.
Yes, good host. Keeps you on the toes. You're glued to the screen throughout the show. It's really amazing. On a scale of 1 to 10, do you have maybe 2 out of 10, or probably in percentage 20% of programs in English? Most likely not. So Just to the people who have been pushing us to have the square in Kinyarwanda, just understand that this is part of the 20% that is in another language. Yes.
True.
Yeah. But I think that's a business opportunity for you, Diana, to produce the show. Yeah.
And you, Charles and Mena. Well, we'll see. But like you say, there's fantastic Kinyarwanda content on TV Rwanda in terms of current affairs that should definitely be applauded. Keep your tweets coming using the Square RW on this particular issue. We're going to read them later on in the show. And the next topic that we want to touch on, again, that you, our viewers, told us to take stock of, and this is something that I know personally I've suffered from it. Brenna, Charles, I'm not sure, as someone who's the creme de la creme, the creme de la creme in this particular field in terms of property is to do with tenant rights. So, there are very many stories of landlords who are just terrible in terms of following up or sticking to their lease agreements. Most tenants, as I'm going to talk about residential, most tenants in Rwanda are at the mercy of landlords, just, increasing the rent and at any time not informing tenants and so forth and so on. And yet there's actual legal redress that maybe most tenants are not aware of regarding their rights. So just, Charles, I'll start with you because this is something that's in your field. One of the viewers told us to please, discuss this issue. And the tenant-landlord law exists. But if you can just share with us, what is the main cause of disagreements between tenants and landlords from your experience, your expert experience, and what solutions do you think you can offer some of our viewers who asked for this topic to be discussed on the Square tonight?
I have had quite a number of cases or instances where tenants have been mistreated by their landlords, or landlords have been heavily high-handed in the way they've managed their tenants. Just to put things in historical context, historically, it has been a landlord's playfield generally in the Rwandan property market. And this doesn't matter whether you look at things commercially or in terms of residential property. So tenants have historically been at the mercy of landlords, whether it is in terms of the amount of rent that you pay, the quality of house that you live in, the upfront payment that you have to pay, and so on and so forth. Now, the direct impact of that is that tenants quite often find themselves in a take-it-or-leave-it situation. Because, for example, if you want to live around Kachiru and you want to live in a 2-bedroom apartment, you want to be spoiled for choice in terms of 10 properties.
In Kachiru?
Yes, if you actually pick a radius of about 1 kilometer from where RBA is, and you want to live in a 2-bedroom apartment that befits somebody who appears every Wednesday on the Square, you won't be spoiled for choice. And if you even lower it down and move to a receptionist at RBA, again, you won't be spoiled for choice. So you'll either have to pay above your means or compromise on the quality of the product, just because the supply is not that broad. So it's a supply issue. It's a supply issue, and when there's a supply issue, definitely the person who is selling the good or the service will always have the upper hand. The second thing is tenants who do not know their rights. So people do not understand, even for starters, that it is important to have a contract, to have a tenancy agreement or a lease. And they just live in the house. They imagine that in as long as they are paying rent, it's enough. So that puts you so much in a very vulnerable position, because the moment the landlord wakes up and decides, I've gotten somebody paying me higher rent, you'll be at his mercy in terms of notice or whatever is concerned, or asking you to pay more. So tenants need to understand their rights. The third one is really around landlords themselves. You see, sometimes, one time we were trying to let a commercial property, and this particular finance manager of that institution had a 25-page lease.
Wow.
Now, all of us will come across these agreements. I'll give you 2 examples. If you look at your insurance agreement, whether it's for your car or whatever, that fine print, how often do you read that fine print? You hardly read it. The second extremely disturbing situation is on our land titles, the land leases. On the back of the page where your particulars are, there is, I think in Times New Roman 7, tiny
Size 7.
yes, tiny little words that you can hardly pick in Kinyarwanda for everybody. And then you ask yourself, if you have only read that it is 250,000 francs a month that you're paying, and Banana Matter is there at the bottom, the likelihood of you signing that is extremely high. So I think on that part, landlords are not fair to their tenants. But the largest reason by far is and the issue of supply is fading. It will take some time, but it is fading. The issue of tenants being aware of their rights is what really needs to be emphasized so much, because you should say, no, I don't agree to that clause. I need a longer notice period, and so on and so forth.
Yeah, I think Charles covered that extensively. Yeah, but just to talk about another issue, which is again around rights. You find that most landlords would prefer to be paid in dollars.
In Rwanda?
Yes.
I don't know about most, but
I know
many.
Yes, okay. Yes, there are many who still demand that you either pay me in dollars or you again, which goes back to supply. But there's a law actually, from the central bank that obliges them to. We should be paying, in francs. Mm-hmm. Who is there to enforce that? I don't know. Whose responsibilities? I don't know. But, there are many people who struggle and they have to find dollars. Mm-hmm. And yet, ideally, we should have our contracts in francs. Yeah.
No, absolutely.
Can I comment about that a little bit? I think you're right. The central bank did release an instruction, I think 2017 or thereabouts, that was obliging people to, was reminding people that the only currency that we're allowed to trade in and transact in is the Rwandan franc. But the practicality, again, of that has been the biggest elephant in the room, especially for commercial landlords. Reason being, when you're going out there to look for money to do this development, the central bank will not say, don't bring euros, don't bring dollars. Right? Yeah. So when you borrow in foreign currency, you have to repay in foreign currency. So that's the hugest factor by far. The second thing, even though the central bank prohibits transactions in foreign currency, it is not an outright no, even for our local banks, to lend in foreign currency. Sometimes all you have to do is prove that the income you will be earning will be in foreign currency. And you will get foreign currency from a local bank. So isn't that just shooting ourselves in the foot?
Well,
yes.
I mean, you can understand that there's always going to be a risk that comes with, the foreign exchange risk is always there. But I think that the institutions in charge of enforcement have to protect consumers and customers. Because, if you're a business, definitely the issue of money, if you're borrowing in dollars, that's not my business. If I'm coming to you as a tenant, you take care of what you have to take care. I'm coming to you, I expect that I will have my contract in francs. So I think for me the issue again is enforcement. And I still understand the risk around, the forex and the shortage of money, again, borrowing, because most of this money is coming from abroad. But we have to be able to enforce certain things, because at the end of the day, we need a strong currency. And that is also another huge debate.
Yeah. But also to add to that, in terms of, if you the rate of that particular foreign currency, if it keeps on, appreciating, the tenant is
depreciating for that matter.
Exactly. Yeah, the tenant is at a loss in terms of paying it in a local currency compared to this foreign currency. But absolutely, I think this is something that the tenant landlord law exists, but I don't think in terms of being implemented, people not knowing their rights, and the landlord will do what they have to do at the end of the day.
Yeah.
Thank you for letting me know it exists.
It does.
As a relatively busy player in that space, I didn't know that it existed, but I'm going to look for that
Yeah.
legislation.
Check it
Please
out.
do,
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, so we are coming to the next part of our conversation on burning issues, edition number 5. This is a conversation that we had last week, but I think 2 weeks ago, on the square with the Rwanda
4 weeks,
National
I think.
Police and the Rwanda Housing Association, yes, regarding Rwanda Hospitality, Housing, Rwanda Hospitality Association and Rwanda National Police. And this was regards to road safety. That is something that is being enforced by the Rwanda National Police and other key stakeholders, and the crackdown on drunk driving. It has been enforced since the year began, and in the last couple of months has had very serious implications. And a couple of changes to this conversation, at least based on what we talked about a couple of weeks before on the square, regards an introduction of a point system. So drivers will have 15 points, and they'll keep on being deducted based on an offense that a driver commits. And I think after 15 points is when they take your driver's license away. It's soon to be introduced, but I think that's something that's very important in terms of improving road safety. And the other thing was, and I think this is what most people focus on, is the blood alcohol content, or the limit, which was 0.08, is said to the speculations that it will be not further, but it will be reduced to 0.04%. So these are some of the interesting things that we've been hearing on social media, from people on the street, even on the square, because this is something we've discussed before. But based on your suggestions, based on your requests, we're revisiting this topic tonight because it's still a burning issue, and I think it will be for some time to come. And it's great to hear as much opinions from the public, from our policymakers, from our leaders on this important topic, because it is really about the lives of Rwandans. Men, women, and children. But before we take it back to the square again, let's hear from what some of our viewers have been telling us on the street. Let's take a look.
Yes, it will. I think it will improve road safety, and it also get people to be more cautious about road safety. But there is just a little bit exaggeration in all this thing, which is jailing people for 5 days. 1 day would be okay, but 5 days is quite exaggerated. All right?
Okay. My name is Christian Ituze. I'm an entrepreneur, and our product is called Designated Driver. I'm the operation manager and the co-founder. Designated Driver is a service-oriented business where we offer drivers to pick up people who are having fun, who maybe have enjoyed a drink or two, and drop them wherever they go. They pick people in their own cars. The idea and the concept itself came way before. It was earlier this year. We started it, and then the enforcement came afterwards when the police started to enforce that people shouldn't be driving while drunk. And the enforcement made it easy for us because people were not understanding what we do at first, but now they know how tough are the rules, and they're using our service. So far, so good. We're making good numbers. We have 20 drivers, and we make very good numbers during weekends. And bear in mind that we're still in the low season. Things are going to be even tougher when it comes to the higher season in December. But we are getting ready. We're shaping the structure well. Soon enough, we'll be ready to serve even a bigger number. Now we operate in Kigali and in Gisenyi, and we'll roll out in other main cities eventually, very soon.
I think so, because this driving policy is helping people to be safe, and it's helping people to be smart. Now lately people are taking bikes or taking to taxis because they think they will be jailed for 5 days, which is a great measure. So they'll be careful, and they'll try to be serious about what they are doing, because this is a serious measure. If it will be so like 1 day or just money, I think Rwandan can be helping. I mean, they can tolerate that, but the 5 days, it's so tight. So I think it's a great idea, and it's reducing accidents in the roads and everything. I think it's a great thing.
Yeah, well, that was very interesting in terms of some of the comments you got. I think I'll kickstart. Personally, what I have noticed about the crackdown on drunk driving to promote road safety in the country is the innovative solutions young people are coming up with.
I know.
So that young man is called Christian, and he is in charge of a company called Designated Driver. I was about to say designated survivor. Christian is in charge of what is known as designated driver, and these are young men who are 20 in total, who go about, they go and wait at bars or restaurants, and they advertise themselves, and the person uses your car personally to drop you home, and then finds his way back to wherever it is their station. So I think that's a great innovation, so to speak. Yeah. Berna, you were asking me something earlier on.
No.
There's some people who also, like we said, we saw from Chris, who opposed it, saying, well, not opposed it, but said the 5 days is a bit too much. But this is something I'm looking forward to hearing between you, Charles.
Especially because we have a difference in opinion.
Yes, you, Charles, and Berna.
Yes,
yeah.
quite a strong
But generally,
difference.
that's what our viewers have been telling us.
A strong difference in opinion, and we are talking about safety. We are talking about lives, okay? You only have one chance, okay, at it. So I don't understand the debate around enforcement, personally, because what happens? What is the alternative? Someone is dead, like, that's it. So I think the debate around, the risk compared to what is at stake, I'm happy for the police to actually do as much as they can. Now, that said, I think that most of the anger and the anxiety has been around because suddenly, there was enforcement. Again, going back to, predictable implementation of policy. And the question on many people's minds is, why wasn't the enforcement always there? Did we have to wait for the numbers to actually, get the enforcement? And I think that's where the issue is really. But we all understand that we have to, it is for our own good, it's for our own safety, and I'm glad that now there's a whole ecosystem around it, the drivers, you have businesses that are also hiring some of these drivers, and it's good. Yeah.
Well, my argument has always been with the harshness with which we do certain things. And I'll give you, first of all, before I go to the harshness, I want to give credit where it's due. So, I want to commend the National Police for something I saw on Sunday that and I think the people are listening to the square and watching it. So we went for a tennis tournament in Bugesera, and on our way back, the driver was stopped a number of times. Not once was he breathalyzed. He was asked to repeat the same drill. He would get out of the car, switch off the engine, go to the boot, open it, close it, and they would tell him to go.
Okay.
I saw that for my first time on Sunday, and I was extremely impressed. I must apologize to the police who follow Twitter and watch the square that I didn't tweet about that, but I've said it here. I think it's louder than the tweet. So that's a very good step in the right direction. My argument has always been that the harshness with which this measure is being implemented.
What is harsh?
Let me tell you, do you know, Bana, did you know that if you drank 1 glass of wine, you'd fail the breathalyzer test?
Well, I wouldn't be driving.
would that mean you're too drunk to drive?
No, I mean, it's not about being too drunk.
Yeah, because that's actually how it is labeled.
I don't think it's
That
about
is, you know,
being
that is
drunk.
how it is labeled. Somebody who has drunk themselves silly and can hardly walk, and another person who has drunk one glass of beer are in the same category. And now,
but
that's self-defeating. You know, even before a court of law, Bana, let me make my point. Before a court of law, the judge will always listen to what they call mitigating circumstances or aggravating circumstances. If you are a guy who said, go and kill people during the 1994 genocide, and you are on RTLM making noise about this and instigating, and another person who hid people, you're not in the same category. You're all criminals, yes.
Can I just make one small clarification,
so,
please?
That's actually my biggest point about it, is that the levels of understanding, and I'm not calling for really tolerance, I'm calling for understanding of that person they call a law enforcement officer have been in existence. I saw something on Sunday, and I hope I'm not the only one who witnessed it, but I think that was a step in the right direction. Before you make your point, Ban, I want to talk about the 5 days, and there's a gentleman there on the Vox Pop who did bring it up. The New Times today had a story about the National Human Rights Commission saying that our prisons are overcrowded. I don't know whether that stretches to police cells. On a lighter note, I know we did bring it up with Afande Kabera when you hosted him. I was under the impression that maybe these days, from the time RIB came in place, our police cells are so empty that the guards are bored. They have no suspects to have conversations with at 4 in the morning.
So your point is that
Charlie, I can't believe you just said that.
Yes, but I hope they can. It's something that can be looked at on a lighter note.
But I just want to ask Brenna very quickly. So Charles, you're saying the measures of 5 days are harsh. 1,
yes.
2. You're saying someone who's drunk themselves silly, and someone who's taken
one glass of
wine.
Yes.
Categorized. If they fail the breathalyzer, they're put in jail.
Yes.
What's your solution to this? You pointed out your opinion, but what is a sort of situation where you think...
It's very, very simple. Again, back to the law enforcement officers. Those guys they should be equipped enough with the skills to judge that you're not in a position to drive or otherwise.
I don't think so.
Personally, for me, it's black and white. Just if you're getting into your car, do not have a sip of alcohol. It's done in other countries. I don't see why it cannot be done in Rwanda.
I don't know any country where it's done, but...
No, there are countries where it's zero tolerance.
Yeah.
It's 0 points. You know, you go to countries like Dubai or, countries in Europe, just don't drink and
drive.
drive.
In Dubai.
Under the influence.
Can I make my point, please?
Yes, Brenna.
The thing is, how much alcohol one has to take varies depending on your body.
Yes.
Okay, so 1 glass of wine could actually make me very drunk. That's 1. 2, I don't think the police should spend a lot of time studying drunk behavior, like, at what level are you so drunk, or I don't think the police is in that business. They're simply enforcing. What are they enforcing? If you have had alcohol, you shouldn't be behind the wheel. And why? Because you're endangering lives. So I don't understand the debate. I think that it should be practice, and it should be out of responsibility for us to actually understand that the moment you've had a drink, just stay away. And there are options. We have Move, we have Yego, there are several options. So I don't understand the debate around, businesses are collapsing because, it's like there are no options. But we have options. And thankfully, we even have businesses now that are coming up around, that are seeing it as an opportunity.
You know what I think? I think,
but
just very quickly, let me just weigh in, because I know my job is to let both of you speak and be heard.
Especially on this argument. Bana and I can go on until morning.
Exactly. I think, one of the things I think is that it reminds me of the 2009 policy that was put forward by the ministry for schools to implement this policy, this directive, Kinyarwanda as a medium of instruction from primary 1 to primary 3. Over a decade, I don't know if they were doing educational audits to visit schools to find out. All of a sudden, almost 10 years later, they're going and investigating if schools are putting this forward. And of course, that's why there's all this hullabaloo around, because these audits should have been happening on an annual basis to ensure consistency of implementation. Now, I think, and you mentioned it earlier, I think the Rwanda National Police and various stakeholders are doing a good job, but it seems like it's a crackdown. It seems like it is a top-heavy, top-down sort of directive that's happening, because it is only in 2009 where they're really serious about implementation. Most of us moved to this country in 1994. And, we can't, start going back and saying things should have been done. But I think at least in the last 10 years, if this sort of mindset, if this sort of crackdown on drunk driving was part and parcel of our lives, this would be ordinary. What's happening would be ordinary. It would be the norm. Most Rwandans would know you just don't get behind the wheel, because the repercussions are serious, they're dire. But what's happening is that in at least 12 to 24 months, there's this sort of crackdown. And so Rwandans are just kind of, but eventually I think what makes us get to a level where this is now the norm. It's the same way you walk, you will not litter. If you're driving and you're eating a banana, you'll wait until you get to your next stop to throw away that banana peel. You won't toss it out of your car. So I think it's the same thing whereby if you're going for your friend's party or a wedding, you just know you won't get behind the wheel if there's a possibility of having wine. So I think it's also that sort of, the implementation timeline, the stretch of having things kind of be a certain way for a couple of years and people get used to it. So it goes back to that same issue whereby I think this is something normal, but it's the manner or the time frame in which it's being done that people think it's too serious, so it's too much.
And just to emphasize, we have options. There are options.
Absolutely.
There's Move, there's Yego, we have Moto, and there's so much now going on in terms of improving public transport. So I think, Charlie, but shouldn't worry.
Sometimes when you live in a very nice house in Kanombe, you work in an AC office, you drive to work, you may not know the reality on the ground. A young man who earns 300,000 francs a month and is growing steadily in his job, after about a year can afford a vehicle loan and he'll get a Toyota Carina and he'll be good. This guy cannot afford to drink more than, say, about 10,000 francs a weekend. By the time the guy is driving, it already categorizes the kind of hangout he can go to. It also means that he can't hang out alone. 10,000 francs is a drop in the ocean in Kigali's highly expensive city. Now, that is where the bulk of spenders are. It is not the likes of us guys who can afford moves. It's not the likes of us guys who can afford whatever. It's not like you guys who can afford to pool. We don't even represent 1% of the alternative beverage consumption market in Rwanda. And that is where the cry is coming from.
So very quickly, before we... Okay.
That is where the
can
cry
I counter
is coming
that?
from.
No, we have 5 minutes,
yes.
and I know if I leave both of you to this, we will stay here, like Charles says, until the cows come home. But very quickly, Charles, I think you're pointing out how this is affecting people. And it's true, you're putting a reality out there, economically and so forth and so on. But, I mean, that's what Charles is doing. Whether it's playing the devil's advocate, whether it's speaking on behalf of people who told him to come here tonight and say, please, this is what we think. But at the end of the day, I think what needs to be done needs to be done. And I think we'll adapt somehow. Those brackets you're mentioning will
I don't know of any society that does not exercise tolerance. I don't know of any law enforcement officer in the world that is not trained to appreciate the person that they are dealing with. I don't know of any laws in the world that do not appreciate that the levels of criminal or civil disobedience differ. And that is the problem that I have.
Quickly to our tweets. Brenna, I'm sorry, forgive me. But let's go to our first tweet. And these are tweets as the conversation has been going on the square. This is what they've shared with us. And our first tweet comes from Emmanuel. And Emmanuel says, are we educating our children for exportation? What unsure choice are we making for our children's future? The square, why creating a new generation of, what does involuer mean?
No idea.
Charles, you said you speak French. Is that
That's Kenya Franglais.
Yes. Anyway, the next tweet is from Richard. It's always a pleasure to hear from Richard. And Richard tells us that arguably English is a global language, and it is the language of the global labor market. Can we have multilingual learning where teaching is in English, but some aspects can be explained in Kinyarwanda? There is a shortage of academic terms in Kinyarwanda. Brenna, what do you say to that?
Not sure about that, no. I wouldn't agree. I think that we have to put as many incentives as possible. And part of that is education.
Education?
Yes. So Kinyarwanda has to be a core subject. Yeah, it has to be.
I know you told me that you'd really want to read this tweet. Yes. Yes, our next tweet is from Dominic. Yes. And Dominic is really upset that, he's hurt that young people these days do not speak Kinyarwanda.
And they don't understand the Migani. They don't know about Bakameo, Amaguru ya Sargwaya.
Yes.
Yes, I think.
Actually, that was me too. I was the one supposed to read it.
Yes, please read it.
Na kintu kibabaza nk'ukuntu kids of these days batajya bumva imigani. Imagine not knowing Bakame or Maguru ya Sargwaya.
But just before you move away from that tweet actually says so much about how we should
the
know
problem
Kinyarwanda.
that we have today.
The Kinyarwanda is very poorly written. The whole tweet is not in Kinyarwanda, neither is it in English. Yeah, it just says so much about the problem. Yes.
That exactly says a lot about our problem. Before we go to the next two tweets that are waiting to be read, no, Charles, you have a good point for sure regarding the fluency. It's neither Kinyarwanda nor is it English. So we have a tweet coming in from Kanko. And Kanko is asking us that did the education institutions train enough teachers capable of imparting knowledge in Kinyarwanda? I think we have seen this. We have had this show with members of the Rwanda Education Board. We've talked to the ministry. We've had shows and the literature is also out there. Yes. To answer your question, yes, there are enough teachers trained in Kinyarwanda to impart Kinyarwanda not only as a subject but as a medium of instruction. Okay. Absolutely, yes.
I'm glad to know.
They're there. So we have come to the end of the show. The minutes really run by very quickly on the Burning Issues edition. Brenna, I would like to hear from you regarding your closing remarks. If you can touch on the key topics we discussed tonight. Kinyarwanda is a medium of instruction in schools as well as road safety.
Absolutely. It has to be Kinyarwanda. We have to do more to promote the language. We have a new generation of young people, but it all begins at home. You know, in our homes, we have to be able to speak this language. The clampdown on drunk driving, I absolutely support the ongoing efforts. I don't feel that anybody should take alcohol and be behind the wheel. And mind you, I drink alcohol, so it's not that, I don't drink alcohol, I drink alcohol, but I feel that it is our duty and responsibility to put safety first in everything that we do. And we do have options. And I don't agree that there are designated places for drinking alcohol. We have bars, all right?
That's true.
Yes, there are these bars that people can just go to the bar next door to your house.
Very quickly, Charles, closing remarks.
From kwashiorkor and cholera in some of those bars. Two things. One, do not drink and drive. Two, Bana, let's work on improving your driving skills and you will not be worried about one glass of wine. And then we can have this discussion taken to another level.
Thank you very much, Charles and Bernard, to be continued after the show. Thank you for watching the show. Thank you very much for helping us get a very good content on Burning Issues edition number 5. We have this every last Wednesday of the month, where it's just a Square with and panelists listening to you, our viewers on social media, off the streets, and discussing issues that you've put forth to us. So thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and ideas. Thank you very much for tuning in. Keep the conversation going using the hashtag #TheSquareRW. And to our partners, Uzi Collections and Bourbon Coffee, thank you very much. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good night and see you again next week.